Well, hello everybody and welcome. I am Jeff Cowen. This is the TRPA Lake Tahoe Environment Report. I am the Public Information Officer for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. Up at the Tahoe region, we're known as just TRPA. And even though we're in midwinter right now, there is a lot happening up at Lake Tahoe all year round around a particular protective measure for aquatic invasive species. In fact, just this January, our governing board enacted a couple of new updates and amendments to a program that's been operating since 2008 to inspect watercraft and to try and control aquatic invasive species populations that are already in the lake. So what we wanted to do was to outline for you some of the updates to the program and highlights from 2012 of what was happening up there. So I'm joined today by Ted Thayer. He is the Aquatic Invasive Species Program Coordinator for TRPA, and he's been working on this for a long time. Ted's really led the effort in a lot of ways. But Ted, all this stuff that's going on with aquatic invasive species up in Tahoe, how is the program going so far?
The program's going really well, and in 2012 we had another very productive year, and we're working with all of our partners, both public and private, to do a lot of different things up at Lake Tahoe. You know, people think of just our watercraft inspection program, but there are a lot of other things going on. Agencies like the Tahoe Resource Conservation District and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and agencies like California State Parks have been doing a lot of work when it comes to controlling of Eurasian water milfoil and other weeds in the lake. We've been collaborating with our partners at University of Nevada, Reno and UC Davis to work on Asian clams, and with our private partners to address problems with weeds as well. So it's been a really good year up there. We've been conducting monitoring, early detection monitoring, as well as the watercraft inspection program. So,
and that's the way that I think most people know about aquatic invasive species because of the boater interaction. You know, getting up to Lake Tahoe, there is a requirement for an inspection or to have your boat sealed, before you get before you're actually allowed to launch. How many boats were inspected last year?
We inspected for aquatic invasive species about 7,400 boats last year,
okay.
Which is quite a bit. And those inspections and if necessary, decontaminations are conducted by the Tahoe Resource Conservation District at the 5 locations conveniently located around the basin.
Right. Now, wasn't there, how many boats were certified to go in and out of the lake? Wasn't it a little bit more than 7,000, or was it just 7,000 that were new?
Well, those were the 7,400 were new boats or boats that returned that had gone someplace else, okay, that needed an inspection. You're correct. There are a lot more boats come and go from the ramps in Lake Tahoe. We had a little over 30,000 boats that came and went out of the ramps of Lake Tahoe that were part of this program, where their seals were verified prior to launch.
Okay.
And that's about up about 1% from what it was in 2011.
So over 30,000 boats. I mean, that's a lot of inspections. It's a lot of work. It seems like for a fairly small watershed to try and protect its waters. Is that a high number?
When it is quite a few, that is for sure, and we're definitely dependent on the efforts of our partners who actually run the ramps at Lake Tahoe, the GIDs, Nevada State Parks at Cave Rock and Sand Harbor, as well as our private marina partners. They're really critical into getting that work done.
And those aquatic invasive species inspectors that work at the off-ramp locations now are all from the Tahoe Resource Conservation District.
That's correct.
That was a really critical improvement to the whole watercraft inspection program. I felt like a couple years ago when you said, let's take all of the inspections and decontaminations and get them away from the ramps. And so now the only place that you can get an inspection or decontamination are at these off-site kind of roadside inspection locations that are all around the basin, right?
Yeah, that is correct, and that, at least for the summer, that is correct. And that was done mostly to increase the efficiency of the program. We were always looking for ways to make the program more efficient, to reduce wait times as much as possible for the boater. We're really dependent on the cooperation of our boating public, and they've been very, very good about cooperating with this program. So we'd like to do what we can to increase efficiency, both in terms of just costs and things like that, as well as efficiency for the boater. And during the winter, there are still inspections available at Cave Rock.
That's right. The lake doesn't close.
No, it doesn't. We do not close the lake during the winter.
Right. And I think you're right. We've seen a lot more boaters come into the boat inspection stations already ready, already prepared. They know about the inspection program, and they know. But I mean, they care about keeping Lake Tahoe and all the waters around here free from aquatic invasive species because of the the damage that can happen even to their own boats. But there are fees to this program, right? And it isn't totally free.
No, it is not. There are fees, and as you mentioned, the TRPA governing board approved the fee schedule for 2013 in January.
Okay.
Those will go into effect February 1st. The fees, the yearly fees for both boats that only boat on Lake Tahoe, as well as those that come and go, our Tahoe only and Tahoe in and out boats,
okay,
and those stickers, did not change. The annual fees did not change this year.
Right.
But we did increase the decontamination fee for boats that are more complex and have additional systems, air conditionings and generators and that kind of stuff. Because
sure, like big liveaboards.
Exactly.
They have crazy air conditioning. I mean, hopefully one day, we'll be able to get a boat that has air conditioning on it. But that's a pretty complex boat.
It is, and the majority of boats do not fall in this category.
Right.
But they do. Those boats do take considerable amount of resources to fully decontaminate, and so those boats that show up like that, we need to recover some more of our costs. But for the majority of boaters, they won't see
everything's staying the same from 2012.
It's staying the same.
And so there's a Tahoe only sticker, and then there's a Tahoe in and out sticker.
Yes.
And what are the differences between them?
Well, the Tahoe only sticker is for individuals that maintain that inspection seal between their boat and the trailer, so that we can verify that they only boat on Lake Tahoe, hence the name Tahoe Only.
Yeah.
That is still a $30 a year fee, and so that basically pays for those inspectors that we talked about at the ramps.
Yeah.
That keeps those 30,000
right,
odd boats, making sure that they are pose no threat to Lake Tahoe.
Right.
And the Tahoe in and out sticker is for people who come to the lake however many times in the year they want. But they also visit other locations, so they don't keep that inspection seal intact. So for those folks, the fee is a little higher. It's variable depending on the length of their vessel.
Okay.
But they can have as many inspections during the year as they want for that yearly fee. The fee that they may incur each time is if they do not completely clean, drain, and dry their vessel, then they would need to be decontaminated. So we really encourage people to come completely clean, drained, and dry to the inspection station.
I know that is probably one of the more critical parts about how to get on the lake quickly. How to get on the lake, and really get out there and start enjoying your vacation or your weekend as soon as you can. It's that clean, drain, and dry message. But what does clean, drain, and dry mean?
Well, clean, drain, dry really means to make sure that you don't have any foreign material or things hanging off your trailer or your boat. That's the clean part. Sometimes, boats, most people like to keep their boats fairly clean, but sometimes we see boats that have a lot of stuff hanging off of them in the trailer, and
like visible, like chunks of
visible
weeds,
chunks,
mud,
and weeds, and
mud's a big one.
Mud's a big one too, because there are invasive species that can hide in mud.
Right.
So you want to make sure that your boat is clean, and that's pretty straightforward. But then the drain and dry means that we don't want to have any water in any of the systems, whether that be within your bilge or within your engine. And so even if people are cleaning their boat, they want to make sure that they take that hose water that they may have used to flush their engine or flush their bilge and dry that before they come, because our inspectors can't tell whether that water was from a hose or whether it was from an infested water body. So we want to have the boats be completely clean, drained, and dry.
Sure. No, that's true. I know the inspectors, like their job, what they are meant to do is to be kind of like the last last kind of barricade between the unknown and getting in Lake Tahoe. So,
exactly.
So any water at all, if you just hose your boat off, at home and then drove up to the lake, then you could still have standing water in there even if it's clean. The inspector doesn't know that, and you might have to go through a decontamination.
That's true. In which case you would have to go through a decontamination. It'll take a little more time, and also there's an additional charge for that. The best thing people can do is again show up to Lake Tahoe clean, drain, and dry, but that's not just something that they should do for Lake Tahoe. I think that it's really important to note that boaters can do this themselves, practice clean, drain, and dry, and if they do that, they'll prevent the spread of invasive species for any lake, anywhere in the region.
Sure, because Tahoe is kind of central to the region, but there's a lot of other waters that they're still protecting, and this goes into live wells, bait coolers. Even if you don't, even listen, my boat's pretty low tech. I just have a little ice chest that I use as my bait cooler. So that's another thing that I need to have that clean, drain, and dried as well.
Yeah, and if you think about it, it's just good maintenance practices for your boat to make sure that your boat is clean and drained and dry, that you don't have standing water anywhere.
Okay, great, great. So let's see. Clean, drain, and dry is the best way to get into the lake really quickly, and that's kind of the main message for the summer. The fees are staying about the same, but what about the hours of boat ramp operation, where you can get an inspection? Are some of those hours changing?
Yes, that's one thing that we are doing this year is changing the hours of inspections. Now the ramps are still not changing their hours, but in terms of those 5 inspection stations,
the kind of the roadside
inspection stations, exactly. Those hours are changing. We're reducing some of the hours in the times of the day and in the days of the week where we have not seen that many boaters come and need inspections. So we're trying to increase efficiency that way.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to just kind of offer keep the ramps, keep the off-site and roadside inspection locations operating at full speed when all the boaters are there. But it was a really small number. I remember from the governing board meeting in January, there was a really small percentage of boats that were coming during the times when the ramps are now going to close, or sorry, where the roadside inspection locations won't be open.
That's true, and it was about 12% of the inspections that we saw last year occurred during those times. So the vast majority of people are coming during the busier times. And it's worth noting that even like during the week, Sunday through Wednesday, where some of our locations that are not as busy would actually be closing, that would be North Star and Homewood.
Right.
During those days, the inspections are still available.
Right.
They would be available at Spooner Summit, at Alpine Meadows, as well as Myers during those midweek days.
So just so everybody knows, through the winter, you always want to go to www.tahoeboatinspections.com for all your up-to-date information about the fees, about where to go for an inspection, about whether the inspection stations are open, because in the winter and in the off-season, a lot of times in really foul weather when no one's going on the lake, then we go ahead and send the inspectors home and close the existing ramps. But during the winter up until about May 1st, you can get inspected and decontaminated at Cave Rock.
Yes, you can get inspected at Cave Rock,
right,
and at
Lake Forest up in Tahoe City.
Up in Tahoe City. Decontaminations, though, because of the winter weather conditions and the freezing conditions, we're not able to run our decontamination units. So it's important to come, especially important to come clean, drain, and dry in the winter, because decontaminations may not be available just because of the weather conditions, the freezing conditions.
That makes a lot of sense, for sure. And but then the main boating season, May 1st through about the end of September, most locations, is when we go to full-scale operations, and the inspectors are out at all 5 roadside locations most of the time. But we're going to see a few less hours available for roadside inspection locations from like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame, but then Thursday through Saturday it'll be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. at all the normal locations.
Yeah, and I think the best thing for people to do is to check that website that you mentioned, www.tahoeboatinspections.com, and that way they can be informed of the latest updates for hours and things like that.
All right, so TahoeBoatInspections.com. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to get to talk about, other than watercraft inspections, what's going on with aquatic invasive species that are already in the lake, and what Ted and other teams out there are doing to control the existing species. Be right back.
When was the last time you were in water?
2 weeks ago.
Boat inspections are needed in Lake Tahoe because we have this westward expansion of invasive species across the nation.
So do you have any idea what we're doing the inspection for?
For mussels?
For mussels, zebra mussels, quagga mussels. This shopping cart was dropped into Lake Mead for about 5 months. If we were to have zebra mussels and quagga mussels into Lake Tahoe, what we would all see in a very short period of time is multifold effects. Anybody who recreates on the lake in any way would be affected. You can be growing them inside your boat and not even be able to see them, not even know that you have them. Some of the damage they can do on the outside, and as you can see, they clog up the cooling system on your boat.
Annually, we inspect approximately 10,000 boats. Each year, we intercept dozens of boats with invasive species, quagga and zebra mussel on them.
Problem with those quagga mussels and zebra mussels is that they can live for so long out of water. Up here in Tahoe, they say about 30 days. Take a look here in the storage locker.
A boat inspection consists of an inspector looking to see that a boat is clean, drain, and dry.
This being the lowest part of your boat, there's a much larger quantity of water in there. We ask you where you're coming from, where you've been, how long you've been out of water, how you store your boat. When we put all these things together, we'll look in the bilge, in the storage lockers, on the outside of your boat, on your outdrive, on your hull, on your trailer. Make sure that you're not carrying anything like debris, dirt, dirty water, any moisture at all. Open up your bilge container, your engine compartment, your storage lockers, and let the sun and the air get inside those. Without the boat inspection program, Tahoe would be at risk to all sorts of invasive species. A lot of things can happen that would negatively impact our ecosystem and our environment and our local economy as well. Everything's at stake.
It only takes one infected boat to put Lake Tahoe in jeopardy.
Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to TRPA's Lake Tahoe Environment Report. Jeff Cowen and Ted Thayer from TRPA here talking about aquatic invasive species. Again, even though midwinter right now, there's still a lot of work going on and a lot of review of what happened in 2012. So we've talked a lot about the watercraft inspection program, and that kind of falls into the prevention category, species that we don't currently have in the lake and that we're keeping out. But there are some species already in the lake. And there's been a lot, in the newspaper about certain species being harvested, and then a lot of other control programs and harvesting and smothering, things like that.
Yeah.
So last year, how did the control side of the existing species go, and what are some of those species?
Well, the control side of the program did really well. When we mean by control, like you mentioned, is controlling those species that currently exist in Lake Tahoe. And so we have a number of weed species in Lake Tahoe. We have Eurasian water milfoil and curly-leaf pondweed are the big weeds that we try and control. Asian clams are currently in the lake, as well as a number of warm water fish species. And then there are a few other invasive species in the lake that people hear about. But the Asian clams, warm water fish, and the weeds are the big ones that we tackle as a program.
So the two weeds are milfoil and pondweed,
yes.
Asian clams, shellfish, warm water fish.
And it's important to note that those Asian clams are the only invasive shellfish in the lake.
Okay, right. No, that's important because it's the quagga mussel and the zebra mussel that were found in Lake Mead in 2007 that really spurred emergency action to get the watercraft inspection program going. Yes. But we already had Asian clams at that point. We hadn't seen a lot of growth in them, but I know that there was kind of an explosive sort of, sudden, huge, much bigger populations of Asian clam at certain locations around the lake.
That's true. In 2008, we did see University of California research divers who were out doing their normal monitoring of the near shore, saw a buildup of algae, and it's particularly in Marla Bay, as well as a great increase in the density and numbers of these clams. And that's really when we started to take notice of the need to do something about these Asian clams.
Because they were finding that there were large blooms of algae that were associated with the clam beds, and the algae was washing ashore, and it was really making for a big impact to recreation and to people's ability to enjoy the lake.
You look back at pictures of Marla Bay in the summer of 2008, and you can see that it's not the clear blue waters of Lake Tahoe. It's fluorescent green waters of Lake Tahoe, which is definitely, as you mentioned, that's not the kind of thing people come to Lake Tahoe to see, and to recreate on those beaches.
So some of those big Asian clam removal projects started on the east shore and on the south shore, but more work has gone on in Emerald Bay just last year.
That's right. The focus in this last year has been Emerald Bay. We started with a pilot project starting in 2011, that was the winter of 2011-2012, to evaluate how some of the technologies that we've used in past projects would work in Emerald Bay. We knew that there's a small population of Asian clams in Emerald Bay, and Emerald Bay is certainly one of the focal points of our lake. And it's also a place where we have invested a lot in treatment of weeds and other things. So it was definitely a high priority for us. But the technologies that we used, which is basically, it's a rubber mat, it's a pond liner, like you would find in your backyard pond, that we put down over the bottom that suffocates the clam in place. There's no chemicals involved or anything. It's basically just the dissolved oxygen goes down and we suffocate them in place. That worked really well, like you mentioned, on the east and the south shore, but the nature of the mouth of Emerald Bay made it unclear whether that kind of technology would actually work. So we tested that. We found that it wasn't working as well as we would like, so we then tested it putting some biological material underneath the barriers, where when that actually decomposes, that helps to drive the oxygen down.
Right, so the smothering is a matter of removing dissolved oxygen from right on top of the bed.
Exactly.
And now you've got two layers that are going down.
That's right, and so because that pilot project was successful, then what we've done since then is the partners involved in Asian clam project, which include the California Department of Parks and Recreation, the Lawton Water Quality Control Board, and the universities, Davis and UNR, as well as TRPA, have gotten together and decided that we were going to go ahead with a full-scale 5-acre treatment in the mouth of Emerald Bay. So starting in the fall of this year, there were 5 acres of this bottom barrier that's placed down in the channel at Emerald Bay.
Right where the boats go back and forth. Right where the boats go by.
And that's why we waited till fall to do it, is because one of the things we wanted to make sure is that while we were there, with contractors, contract divers, and our barge, that we wouldn't be interrupting boat traffic in there. And in fact, we did, our TRPA boat crew was there to help direct traffic, and a lot of the tour boats that came through were able to do so without interfering with their operations or our operations. It was a really good collaborative effort on part of both the private sector and us.
No, absolutely. I know that both the paddle wheel companies and all the other boaters in the area were really patient and really helpful in getting that project done just right there in the mouth. I mean, it's probably the most visited place in all of Lake Tahoe, and then it's all concentrated down to one small channel, maybe 100 yards wide, in which all boats need to come in and out, and everybody was still able to get in and out of the bay while you were doing that. That's pretty cool. And that was a lot on TV, too. We saw a lot of media coverage of it. It was a big event.
It was a big event. And the thing to highlight about this is again, there's a lot of agencies involved in this, and this is really a collaborative project with the researchers. And so what we've been able to do is combine research funding and funding from management agencies like the Lawton Water Quality Control Board and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with funds from the research community to put this down and test its effectiveness, so that we can not only see how it works in this area of Lake Tahoe, but we can also share that information with lakes around the West and around the country to see that if they can use this technology elsewhere.
But before you guys started trying to control Asian clams in Emerald Bay, and Asian clams kind of get a lot of headlines because of the divers and because going underwater and things like that. But I think that one of the things that almost all boaters or all even beachgoers around Lake Tahoe have seen and recognized and are impacted by is weeds.
Exactly.
I mean, weeds are a big deal, and they're in a lot more areas than the Asian clam are right now. But you guys started years before the Asian clam in Emerald Bay. You started removing weeds in Emerald Bay.
That's right. California Department of State Parks and Recreation, along with the Tahoe Resource Conservation and TRPA, have been working in Emerald Bay for many, many years, going back, around 2006 and earlier.
We've got a picture of kind of an up close picture of a couple things that we're going to throw up. There's a before and after shot that we're looking at here near Vikings Home Castle. What are we looking at in this picture?
Well, this area is Avalanche Beach. This is an area just south of Vikings Home Castle. There's a lot of deadfalls in that area, snags in the water, so it's an area that is not visited as much by boats, but is immediately adjacent to where you see a lot of boats visiting right there at the mouth of the creek in Emerald Bay. The image on the left here is from 2006, and that shows what you're seeing is algae on top of the water, but what you're seeing underneath the water is a lot of Eurasian water milfoil.
Okay, and that's the Eurasian water milfoil weed, not the curly pondweed, but
exactly.
It looks really gross.
It is. This is not what people come to Lake Tahoe and specifically Emerald Bay to see. It's hard to go swimming in this kind of these weeds, and it impacts water quality and brings in other invasive species alike. So this is one thing that we really try to get rid of. Now the image on the right hand side, if you look on the it is basically the same area of Avalanche Beach 6 years later after we've been treating it. If you notice in the water up on the image on the left-hand side, there's some snags sticking out of the water next to that boat.
Back in the background.
Back in the background. Sure. Those are the same snags that are up in the upper part of the image on the right-hand side from 2012. And you notice in the foreground there are no weeds. And this is an example. Hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish around the lake in areas where there are weeds. And as you mentioned, there are other areas around the lake.
It's a huge improvement, but I mean, it was a lot of work. Didn't divers have to go down and kind of like hand pick that stuff and get it sucked up through a tube?
Yeah, there's two technologies that we use for weeds. One is a bottom barrier, very much like we discussed with Asian clams, except it's not rubber. It's actually a material that allows the gas to come through. And that basically functions just like if you left a board or a kiddie pool on your lawn too long. It shades the plants and kills them.
So no sun. Instead of no oxygen in the case of the clams, it's no sun.
It's no sun.
In case of the weeds.
Yep, and no photosynthesis, and they die. But there are areas like Avalanche Beach with the high density of snags and other things where those are not necessarily as effective. And so you're right. Commercial divers have gone down this year and treated in majority in Avalanche Beach, but along the Viking Solmswind Beach and other areas.
Yeah. Hand
pulling and sending them up a suction tube to be collected on the surface. They did about 3 acres of treatment in Emerald Bay in 2012.
3 acres.
3 acres.
That's a lot. That is a lot. So, and then lake-wide, I think there was more like 7 acres.
Just a little less than 8, yes.
Okay, and that was all through 2012. But in other places too. I know that a lot of people kind of know and recognize that when we talk about warm water fish at Lake Tahoe, luckily at this point we don't have warm water fish species really colonizing out in the lake, but it's the Keys, it's the Tahoe Keys where there's a really big population of warm water fish in there.
That's true. When it comes to warm water fish, the Tahoe Keys is the largest population. There are other areas around the lake where we do see them in these embayments and marinas, but most of them are focused in the Tahoe Keys, and that is another thing that we're looking at and another thing that we've been actively treating, and that effort is led by the California Fish and Wildlife Department along with the Nevada Department of Wildlife and the University of Nevada, Reno, and they removed a little over a metric ton, about 2,400 pounds of warm water fish this year, predominantly from the Tahoe Keys.
And what did they do with all that fish?
Those fish are sent down to UNR for research.
Okay.
The important thing about the warm water fish is that they are impacting our native minnow population, which in turn impacts our cold water sport fish that people come to Tahoe for, the Mackinaw and other cold water trout species.
When you look at the food web and the food chain at Lake Tahoe and all the effort to protect spawning grounds and things like that, it's really mostly about the minnows. That's where all the action is in the food web, is right at the minnow level.
It's those forage fish that our cold water sport fishery depends on.
And so the warm water fish are impacting the minnows in particular, and that effort that's been going on in the Keys. Is there more to come?
Yes, that's something that we really plan on continuing in the subsequent years. Funding allowing.
Okay, that sounds really good. Well, so what do we have to look forward to in 2013, next year, on the control side of the populations that are in the lake?
Well, let's start with, we talked about Asian clams, particularly in Emerald Bay. The bottom barriers that were put down this year are actually going to stay all the way into the fall of next year. So boaters going through the channel will see these black barriers on the bottom. The reason we're leaving them down until fall of 2013 is, again, so that when we pull them up, we're not interfering with the high boating season.
Okay, I get
so
you.
So we'll be that's what we're doing for Asian clams, is finishing up that project. We'll likely be in some of the same locations for our weed treatments back in Emerald Bay, the channel at Ski Run Marina, and also we may be back in the area of Lakeside Marina and beach there, where we did a lot of work this year. As part
the program is always continuing to improve, always looking for a more sustainable funding source. But more importantly than anything else, I think, is just to have everybody come into Lake Tahoe clean, drained, and dry, whether you're a kayaker, a motorboat, or a paddleboarder. Clean, drain, and dry is the message, and we'll continue to protect Lake Tahoe from aquatic invasive species. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the TRPA Lake Tahoe Environment Report. We'll see you next time.
And you steal my heart. Said goodbye to loneliness. Yeah, we're still worlds apart. And I think I'm blinded, but the light is shown on me. And I keep persisting, the thought of memory. So stay away, just let me be. I'm breaking down.